if you use a factor, excuse me, if you use race as a factor
right,
to evaluate somebody's skills, their merits, or their character, instead of focusing strictly on their actions, that would be racial discrimination.
that's true. Absolutely.
Okay, would it be racial discrimination if you will not hire a white person because they're white, even though they're the most qualified candidate?
Absolutely.
And would it be racial discrimination if you won't let someone into your club organization because they're white?
Absolutely.
Okay, so would you say that racial discrimination is mistaken and morally wrong?
Sure.
Because you shouldn't judge people based on the characteristics of the race that they're from, but based on their individual actions?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do affirmative action programs use race as a factor to evaluate?
That's not what affirmative action programs do, and I'm glad to lay the predicate there so that I could really address that issue realistically. Affirmative action has always been defined, and if you look at every single court decision, even the court decisions that got reported as being against affirmative action, in every instance, the judge making the decision, writing the opinion, made it very clear that there is a need for affirmative action programs in our country. This particular instance, we got rid of this because of this particular reason. Now, what affirmative action is, any program, any policy, any law designed to eliminate the current effects of past discrimination. Now, you know that my mother and father have been discriminated against in such a way. My father, for instance, was not allowed to go to school beyond the 7th grade. Smart as he was, because there was no school was available for blacks beyond the 7th grade. Now, there are residuals that flow from that. And the law says we must take affirmative steps to eliminate those current residuals that have flown from that. And that is what affirmative action is all about.
I understand. Let me ask you a specific case and you can tell me what you think of it.
Sure.
So, for example, suppose an educational institution uses preferences or gives extra points in order to decide who to let into their institution. Are they using race as a factor to evaluate the merits of their applicants?
You have to use race as a factor to determine whether or not the person has even been discriminated against. If you didn't have race as a factor, how would you know whether or not the person was discriminated against? So having race as a factor is legit and it's legal and it's constitutional. Having race as the only factor, you know, there's one reason to have it as a factor, it's something else to have it as the factor. And so when you use it as the factor, then you get into discrimination. But when it is a factor that's in there with other factors, then it is legal and constitutional.
Previously, I had asked you if you thought that if you use race as a factor to evaluate another person's skills, merits, or character, that would be racial discrimination.
No, you used the word solely. Solely. Go back and check what you said. You said, if it's the sole reason, irrespective of their merits. And I said yes. Now,
sorry,
you're talking
Congressman, but we could, if you want, we could play it back for you. You could see that I just used, if you use race as a factor.
As I said, if you raise it as a factor, it's legal and constitutional. If you use it as the factor, it is not legal and it's not constitutional. Now, you're talking to somebody who's been doing this stuff for 30 years.
Well, let's talk about the Congressional Black Caucus.
Sure.
Can a white congressman become a voting member of the Congressional Black Caucus?
No.
Okay, so are they using race to determine who can be a member of the Congressional Black Caucus?
Yes.
So would that be racial discrimination?
No.
Why not?
We always discriminate.